Merry Christmas and welcome to the Tartan Touchdown episodes, where we take you through all of the latest stories and talking points from this week and every week in the NFL. Now, remember everybody, like, subscribe, follow the pod to stay up to date with all things NFL. You can find us on Spotify, we are on Apple Podcasts, we are on YouTube, we are wherever you get your podcasts. So, like, subscribe, turn your notifications on so you stay up to date with all things NFL. Now, we are officially in that really weird space of time between Christmas and New Year where all sorts of really bizarre things happen. We're still all eating turkey. Dessert for lunch is like acceptable. Day drinking is positively encouraged. And the strangest thing of all, it's Victory Monday for me and Gav. It's a Christmas miracle, Gav. How are you doing, mate?
It is a Christmas miracle indeed. I think if there's one thing I know about the Giants and maybe you do about the Browns is we certainly know how to win the number one pick, is it's the heat. It's strange times in the NFL for you and me, I think.
When you have a chance at doing something meaningful in the postseason, no. When it fundamentally undermines your draft stock for the next year, yay! We have teams that love to win games that realistically, well, for you, definitely didn't matter. For us, is it nice to beat the Steelers? Yes. Yes, it is. Other than that, did it do anything? No, not a thing. Right, but let's get into it, Gav. Let's get going. Postseason is looming. We have seen week 17 come and go. I don't even think we can call this the witching hour anymore. I don't know, the witching, 20 minutes. Is it the back of the witching hour? Yeah. So things are starting to shake out. Things are starting to get tidied up. But there's actually still a huge amount of things to be determined still that have got huge playoff implications. So we have still got the AFC North, the AFC South to be decided. We've got the NFC South still to be decided as well. And we've got one seeds both still up for grabs. And as we know, coming along with those, not only are we talking about home field advantage with those division titles, we are talking about that all-important bye. And we know how vital it can be to be able to set the wild card out and come into it fresh in the next round of the playoffs. Now, in the line of things, it's always a bit of a treat at this time of year. It's a festive season, time for treats. We had 3 days of games. So we had a Christmas Day slate, we had the Saturday slate, we had 4 days of games actually. We had Sunday slate, and we have got, of course, Monday night football still ahead of us. Now, going all the way back, Gav, the Christmas Day slate, it's a great one. It's the kind of thing where me and you become wildly unpopular with our families. And everybody's sitting there, trying to play a board game. And then I turn Netflix on. I'm just going to have it on in the background. I promise. I won't turn the volume up too loud. And my wife threatens to throw the spare pigs in blankets at me. So we had 3 games slated for Christmas Day. And I think we were talking about this before we came on, Gav. I think when there was a Netflix executive sitting and doing their bargaining at the start of the year and saying, right, what games do we want for Christmas Day? They looked at these 3 games and went, these will be huge. These are going to be games that are going to have all sorts of meaning behind them. And then the season played out and they kind of didn't actually do that in the end. So we had the Vikings going up against the Detroit Lions. That's one that did have a bit of meaning to it. And we'll talk about that in a sec. We had the Cowboys squaring off against the Commanders, and we had what on paper, imagine this pre-season, Broncos Chiefs on Christmas Day. And then by the time you get there, the Chiefs are already eliminated for playoff contention. Patrick Mahomes' season's over. And the Broncos are the team to beat. Let's start there. What did you make of that one, Gav?
Yeah, I mean, not even pre-season. I think if you get to about week 8, week 9, the execs are thinking, well, do you know what? Some of these other ones may be a bit wobbly, but that's going to be a surefire winner. And I think by the time kickoff rolls around, Netflix are trying to drop Stranger Things that little bit earlier. Yeah, you had Kansas City down to their practice squad quarterback taking the field. But having said that, I think the Vegas were predicting a handicap for the Broncos of something like 12.5 points for this one. They didn't really give the Chiefs a chance. And to be fair to them, it was a lot more competitive than I think most people were expecting. Yes, the Broncos got the win, but the Chiefs certainly did keep playing. But like we said, it's like all three of these games, that the stories come out of them, but they probably didn't have the meaning and the significance that you would have expected if you were looking at those fixtures a couple of months ago.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. So we had, under centre for the Kansas City Chiefs, we had Adakin, and I keep thinking I am butchering his name, so I'm very sorry if you're listening, and I have butchered the pronunciation of your name. But yeah, we had Ladkin under centre, so no Patrick Mahomes. It's not quite what was advertised. However, you did go in leading at the half. Now, right enough, it was a 7-6 lead. It wasn't exactly a 20-point domination that you would like to be sitting at, but you were ahead. And, by the time we were sitting halfway through the third, the Chiefs were 10-6 up. But, yeah, at the end of the day, it was a bridge too far. We had the Broncos are a very good team this year. They just are a very good team this year. Kansas City have not been playing to the standard that we are accustomed to see out of Kansas. It was one that, you lose Patrick Mahomes, what can you do? You know what I mean? You lose your number one player, or as many would argue, the number one player in the league. There's no really replacing him, regardless of who you've got. And then, yes, they lost Minshew the week after it, and it just went for bad to us. But yes, so we had Denver walking away for the win with that. Now, they didn't actually tie anything up on Christmas Day, but they kept themselves in contention to get things tied up. And then the Texans stepped up and helped them finish the job on Saturday. And we'll come to that in a wee minute, because the Texans are quite interesting. Others than Christmas Day, the Cowboys gave the Commanders a whipping, but no one was watching. Sorry, Dad. Even you weren't really paying attention to that one. You had dinner to eat. But the Cowboys, Dak did what Dak's been doing all year. Looked absolutely electric. It's just a shame that they only did it to the Commanders, who are guff. An interesting one on Christmas Day to wind off that wee bit. So, we had the Vikings squaring off against the Lions. Now, the Vikings have been, dare I say it, as a Browns fan, a meme team all year. We've all seen the jokes that have came out about JJ McCarthy and all the rest of it. The Lions were playing to keep their playoff hopes alive, and they came up short. They lost to the Vikings. It was I don't want to say it was a bad game. It wasn't a bad game. It was a defensive game. It was a game where the defenses were on top. And I suppose that's the thing for me, that actually the bigger talking point about this game wasn't actually anything that happened on the field. It was the stuff when we get afterwards, when you're then saying, right, hang on a minute here. Vikings are out of the playoffs. We knew that. The Lions are now out of the playoffs as well. You want to come somewhere else and coach? You want to come get a job? Like, you want to hit the job market early? Been a lot made of that straight away. I don't know what you've been hearing. Of the two big ones that I've been hearing, the Cowboys and the Browns, both apparently looking at Flores and thinking, you could come here. Now, I think with the Cowboys, it's been talking about DC, I'm coming in to be their DC. The Browns has been chat of him replacing Stefanski, who is on the hottest of hot seats. What do you think? What was your thoughts on the game first, I suppose? We can't totally sidestep the game. The poor Lions.
The Lions, I guess, are a funny one, because this was a game last year which we talked about, the case for the Netflix execs. This was one which went right down to the wire to decide that the one seed in the NFC North last season, by all rights, would look like a fantastic game on paper. The Lions are a team who really overcame adversity for most of the regular season last year with the number of injuries. I think they were up to 21, 22 players out in injury at various points. This season, it has been a bit of a theme as well, but maybe not to the same extent. I wonder if it's almost kind of attritional changes. Throwing the loss of Ben Johnson, you also throw in the loss of Aaron Glenn, so both the coordinators have gone. I think when you've got a winning team, when you've got a winning roster, these things don't necessarily cause the world to collapse around you. You've got Dan Campbell, you've got Montgomery, you've got Jahmyr Gibbs, you've got Jared Goff. So there's so many key pieces that are still there, but it's almost this gradual erosion of the team. And it just seems like the Lions are still a team that on any given Sunday you would fancy to win against most teams, but they've just not been quite the same this year. Having said that, they do play in arguably the strongest division in football, because I think the NFC West could absolutely make a case for it. But the reason that I think you've got a case for the North is because there is the opportunity, I believe, for the first time for all four teams in the division to finish with a winning record.
Yep.
And with so many things decided, I think that is a distinct possibility. But yeah, the Lions has just not been quite the same this year. I wouldn't say they're in rebuild mode by any stretch, but they're always kind of in an adjustment phase where there has been so much change that they are still, I think, discovering themselves. So I think they're a team that are definitely looking to make tweaks over the off season, because the big stat coming out of this, and coming back to your point about that Brian Flores defense for the Vikings won with, I think, 3 yards net passing.
Net passing 3 yards. You beat me to it.
So, I mean, if you look at that from a Lions perspective, you're thinking, well, we've completely shut the passing game down. That should automatically set you up for a victory, but no, that just did not happen, and it wasn't even particularly close. It was a 13-point loss to the Vikings. Both teams currently sitting 500. We've got a 17-game regular season now, so my team will finish half and half. You both get two very competitive teams. Detroit's already kind of been robbed of their coaching staff last year, but I think Flores, it is a really interesting one, because there are absolutely teams, I think certainly it's become a Tartan Touchdown meme to talk about Cowboys defensive backs.
Yeah.
So I think absolutely you could see the case for Flores. I guess the one question that I would always throw out there, though, is when you, as a franchise, whoever you are, elect to have a defensively minded head coach, who are you going to pair him with? Because if you look at so many of the most successful teams in the league, I'm thinking of Sean McVay with the Rams, you've got McDonald with the Seahawks, you've got Sean Payton with the Broncos. You tend to lean more towards offensive coordinators making it successfully. It's not to say that you can't do that, because of course, Vrabel with the Patriots doing very well.
Mm-hmm.
I think another example that's obviously the Bills historically been successful, and Sean McDermott is fundamentally a defensively minded coach. So it can be done. The most successful teams do tend to have an offensively minded head coach. So how do you package together your staff to be successful? I think that's going to be a big question for me.
It's going to be huge, and it's, yeah, as I say, I don't think Flores is in purple next year, to put it that way. I think he's going to be moving on somewhere else. And as you say, it is the question then of what success will he have? There's obviously questions over what type of role he steps into. Will he go and be a DC somewhere? Are teams willing to give him a spin as a head coach? I think that's possibly one for the Browns kind of tier of teams, teams that are not as accustomed to success and maybe more willing to take a chance. Another interesting stat that came out of it, which is just hilarious when you consider that, as we say, the Vikings had net 3 passing yards. Yeah, that is 3 as in the number that comes after 2 and before 4. It was also a game where Justin Jefferson entered some elite company. He's passed Randy Moss for the most receiving yards by a player in his first 6 seasons. Now, to be fair, this has been not a vintage year for Mr. Jefferson. And he would probably have passed that mark in about week 6 if they had stuck with Sam Darnold. But they didn't. Max Brosmer has helped JJ step into even more elite company. So that wrapped up our Christmas Day slate, and we then stepped into Saturday. And we opened up with Texans squaring off against the Chargers. Now, Chargers were playing to keep their hopes of the AFC West alive. And they came up short. Spoilers. They couldn't manage it. It was an interesting one, this, though, because, again, we talked just there about defensive games and how defenses really were kind of dominating a lot of the games on Christmas. Well, maybe not the Cowboys Commanders, but they were certainly dominating the other 2 games on Christmas. This is one where the Texans came out slinging. CJ Stroud stepped up 2 big strikes, really fast, and then went very quiet for the rest of the game and said, do you know what? Let's go back to what we've been doing so far this year that has worked really, really well. and let's have this defensive unit stop Justin Herbert. And by God, they managed it. It was an absolutely incredible showing. The Texans won out 2016 over the Chargers, and Justin Herbert, try as he might, just couldn't do enough to bring the Chargers over the line and to keep their hopes of the West alive. What did you, this? I don't know. For me, this was a big one that I expected more out of Herbert. I'm going to be honest with you. Herbert didn't have a bad game by any stretch. You know what I mean? 21 of 32 for 236 yards, a touchdown, a pick. It was a good performance. I was just looking for more. I was just looking for more. How did you see this one?
Yeah, I think the Chargers are a funny one because every time you think they're going to make that leap, just that next step and be a real contender, they have a letdown game. I think with respect to the Texans, you probably do need to put that in that category. Certainly when the Chargers have got home field advantage, they are coming into the game with the slightly better record. They've got their own division title to play for. You would be looking for LA to go and really take the victory there. And I think, I've kind of said as maybe a little bit disrespectful to the Texans. I think for long stretches, we all have at times this season. To be fair to Houston, they've just kept on surprising everybody, mainly off the back of that defense, given that CJ Stroud was actually out for several weeks. But now that he's come back, I think we've seen that he's maybe not a complete game changer, but it is just that little marginal bump that he has the capability to go and make these outstanding plays. As you said, in the first quarter, I think it was 4 of 4 for perfect rating with 2 deep touchdowns. So that's the kind of thing that he can give you those highs, but then went on to throw for 50%, 2 picks in the remainder of the game. The Texans are a team that is always going to have a chance, and I'm thinking more, getting into January now. But can they do that consistently when the standards of opposition takes that additional leap?
And that's, that was going to be my question, because it said a lot around the league, you know what I mean? Offense wins games, defense wins championships. And you would look at that and say, well, that's what Houston are trying to do. They're trying to have an offense with, ran through CJ Stroud. It's not a bad offense. I am not CJ Stroud's biggest fan. He's certainly done a lot more in the closing stages of this season to bring me on side, I suppose. But I still don't think he's not what people thought he was after his first year in the league. But that defense is absolutely elite. But the question is, when you then step into the playoffs and it is win or go home, do you want to be in a position where, like they were on Saturday, where at the end of the day they stepped up with, I'm just going to quickly double check how long they had left. Actually, it was something like 5 minutes. It was on the clock when they came back. 3 minutes. Yeah. 3 minutes or so on the clock that they had to deal with, and you're putting the ball in Stroud's hands. This seems really counterintuitive. Would you rather put the ball in Stroud's hands to see a game out, or would you rather have your defense, if you're the Houston Texans, would you rather have your defense on the field and ask them, do you know what? Shut them down.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because whenever you're watching NFL, you're always thinking you want the ball. You want to score, you want to control the clock, you want to just pound out the yards. But with a defense as elite as the Texans, I don't think this will ever really happen, but it almost becomes like sometimes when you're watching rugby and even late in the game, teams will kick the ball away and almost put it on their opposition to make a mistake. That's something that will happen. And the way that this Texans defense is performed at times, I think if ever there was an argument to play with your defense on the field, it would be them. I can't quite see that happening or anyone buying that in Houston, but I think this is just one of the best defensive units in the league, and they are the reason why the Texans are still very much in the hunt for a division title going into week 18.
Yeah, definitely. You need to have your offense on the field to close a game out. But it is something where if I'm a Texans fan and I'm asking which of my 2 units do I have the most faith in helping me achieve a victory? It's going to be that defense. To the end of the day, bear in mind as well, actually, I almost forgot this. One of the reasons why the Texans actually walked away with the win that game wasn't their offense. It was the Chargers were really late penalty. They were the Chargers had them ready to go into fourth down. And then they had their illegal contact penalty, which gave the Texans a fresh set of downs, and they were able to close it out after the 2-minute warning. Anyway, so yeah, it was really good for the Texans. It did mean that the Broncos tie up the AFC West. First time in, and you checked this before we came on, yeah, first time in a decade, I believe,
in a day,
that we've had the Broncos taking the West, which says a lot about KC's dominance. To be fair, what happened last time the Broncos won the West, Gav?
I believe they won a Super Bowl, Brian, and I believe they won it in San Francisco, no less.
I believe they did. Not that anybody on everyone's favourite podcast about the NFL has called the Broncos to go to and win a Super Bowl this year. I don't know anyone that's mentioned that, Gav. I don't know if you do. But yeah, it could be good for the Broncos. They're going to have home field. They are still in the race for that one seed as well. Right, another one on Saturday. Ravens, what GB? And do you know what? Is this a case of we make a lot of teams, and we're going to talk about another team that I think is doing this as well. We make a lot of teams getting hot at the right time. You want your team getting hot now. This is when it doesn't matter if you're not playing amazing football in November, late October, early November, if some of the football you're playing is rubbish. That's okay. You can live with that. You really can't be playing bad football now. Is that what we're seeing in Green Bay? Ravens win. Ravens walk away, and it's not even a particularly close one. They win 41-24. They keep their hopes alive for the AFC North. More about that in a couple of minutes as well. Green Bay. This is a team that for a team that started the year not necessarily winning everything because they lost to the mighty Browns. Not missing that opportunity. But they looked great. A team that looked really, really good. And it's just not happening right now. What's going on in Green Bay, Gav? Why is it all going a bit wrong?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to look past the injuries. Fairness, Jordan Love, obviously he had a concussion last week, so you have Malik Willis step in, who, to his credit, did put in a solid performance. So certainly not the biggest cliff edges at a quarterback. Malik Willis is still not Jordan Love. And then, of course, on the defensive side of the ball, Micah Parsons, of course, has that ACL tear against the Broncos. His season's over. So you are just starting to see those cornerstones of the Packers' Super Bowl aspirations just falling away. And I think that's really tough. The other thing, of course, with the Packers situation is I'm a big believer in the who needs it more mantra this time of year. The Packers had a chance of getting as high as the 2 seed potentially, but realistically, they were more or less locked in at number 7. And the Ravens, on the other hand, are fighting for the lives, and they really needed that win. Boy, did they come out firing in this one. Derrick Henry, in particular, really had himself probably the game of his season, and what a time to have it to keep the playoff hopes alive.
Yeah, so it is interesting. So, a lot's made of Jordan Love. But at the end of the day, as you say, Malik Willis stepped in, and okay, right, it's Malik Willis. Nobody is going to pretend. There's a reason he's a backup. There's a reason he's not starting somewhere. But at the end of the day, he still chucked it, 18 of 21. What a completion percentage. For 288 yards, he had himself a game. He played clean as well. No picks, 1 touchdown. A passer rating of 134.6. And let's remember that they weren't squaring up against a Lamar Jackson-led Ravens team. It was Snoop. Snoop was in with Tyler Huntley, who had a much more modest outing, but as you say, and this is where I suppose is the question, not, oh my God, the injury to Jordan Love, is the question really, and I said this at the time, is the question more, oh my God, the injury to Micah Parsons. When you have got, now don't know, Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry. The man is an absolute machine. We call him the king for a very good reason. In fact, we were calling him the king on Saturday for 216 very good reasons and 4 touchdowns. He was incredible. But is this the bit, I suppose, where, yes, as you say, at the end of the day, the Ravens needed this win more. They needed to get something out of this game without Lamar so that next week they are alive against Pittsburgh. But is it something that with Green Bay, it's more just what they'd lost on defense was just too big. And when you come up against, when Derrick Henry decides Derrick Henry's going to have a game, because he hasn't been the Derrick Henry of old. Well, how's this for a great cautionary tale? I'm going to say what everybody says about Derrick Henry and no one's been right yet. I think he's about to hit the age cliff. Derrick Henry's been hitting the age cliff for about 15 years. I do think this is going to be the last year of kind of peak Derrick Henry. I think we are seeing him slow down, but not this weekend. The Packers just didn't have enough to stop Derrick Henry on the ground. And at the end of the day, was that just it? You're coming up against a Hall of Fame level running back. Derrick Henry will be in the Hall of Fame. And with what Green Bay were losing on defense, they just didn't have enough to step up against them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was clearly part of the game plan, wasn't it? If you actually look at the stats, Baltimore ran the ball 53 times against the Packers, which Henry had 36 of those carries. By any stretch, in this day and age, whether you're running back by committee or not, 36 is a hell of a lot of times to carry the football. And on the flip side, you're looking at the Ravens coming in with their own backup quarterback in Tyler Huntley, who only attempted 20 passes throughout the game. And it wasn't a particularly impressive number even compared to Malik Willis, 107 yards. But I think the one thing that really stands out for me is he only took one sack. There were no interceptions and there were no fumbles from Baltimore throughout the games. They protected the football. That's the thing that really stands out to me. So when you actually look at that Packers defense, like you say, I guess it's not just Micah Parsons doing Micah Parsons things. If it's also what he enables for the rest of the team, whether that's pressures on the quarterback, forcing turnovers, or creating opportunities for others on the team. There wasn't really any impact from that Packers defense stage, which I guess isn't really surprising when you ship 41 points to the Ravens.
Yep, it was not vintage from Green Bay, but at the end of the day, they are going to stay in the playoffs. They are locked in. So they didn't really need it as such. Right, sticking with the AFC North, we move out to Sunday slate. It's Victory Monday in Cleveland. Yes, the Cleveland Browns crushing, devastating the Aaron Rodgers-led Pittsburgh Steelers 13-6. The theme of defensively minded games continues. This one, we're not going to spend too long on it. The bigger story about this is actually more how it keeps the AFC North alive for another week. Baltimore, you are welcome. We didn't do it for you, but you are the happy beneficiaries. Well done, by the way, to whoever runs the Browns' social media channels for a couple of grade A tweets after the game. But yes, we've seen an absolute defensive masterclass from the Browns. Pittsburgh just couldn't get anything going. Now, yes, this was Pittsburgh who fundamentally had me at wide receiver with no DK Metcalf. So yeah, because he decides he's picking fights with folks in the stands. But it was a game that at the end of the day, it was an absolutely incredible defensive performance. The Browns played like the Browns. Shedeur played like a rookie. He had some really nice throws in the first half. He had some really awful ones in the second half. He's developing reasonably well. One of the talking points, Gav, that came out of this game, and I don't know what your take on this is. I've deliberately not mentioned this to Gav yet, folks. This is great. He's in the dark. A lot was being made, of course, about Myles Garrett chasing the sack record. He's never sacked Aaron Rodgers in his career. This is the last chance he would have to do it. One would assume that Rodgers isn't going to be back in the Steelers next year. Could he do it? No, was the answer. Myles Garrett did not record a sack. But one of the bits that came out of the game, and that came out after the game, were the Steelers a little bit too focused on stopping Myles Garrett getting the sack record as opposed to going for a win? And it's an interesting. I have got some thoughts on this. I have got an opinion. What do you think, Gav? Is this something that were the Steelers focusing on the wrong thing?
I guess the question is if they're focusing on stopping Myles Garrett or stopping Myles Garrett getting the record, because it absolutely makes sense to game plan to neutralise or at least slow down your opponent's biggest threat. And that is, 9 times out of 10, probably 10 times out of 10 when you're playing the Browns defense, that is going to be Myles Garrett. That's who you want to take away. And I guess pick your battles elsewhere. So I can absolutely see why, as an offensive coordinator, as a head coach, you want to scheme to take away someone that is going to try and chase your quarterback all day long. Are they petty enough to focus on the sack record? I will maybe leave that to your thieves. The only thing that I will maybe leave is that one thing that I remember is what another former Packers quarterback, Brett Favre, kind of went the other way in this because he, at the time, gave the sack record to Michael Strahan with a questionable slide.
It was a free sack.
Yeah.
He gave him that.
So, yeah, that was many years ago, but I guess that maybe just shows you the difference in certain quarterbacks' mentalities. But let's put it over to you.
Yeah, well, okay. So, do you know what, right? Okay, Steelers fans, before these all start foaming at the mouth even more. No, I don't think you just played the whole game not to win it to stop Myles getting the sack record. But that's clearly nonsense. What you're saying, spot on. You game plan around Myles. You don't. There's a reason that he's the most doubled player in the league. I think throughout the whole game, I think I've seen one passing down where Myles had a one-on-one. He wasn't doubled or tripled. And he nearly got Rodgers in that play. So yeah, you do, because you need to try and neutralise the biggest threat. What I do think happened, particularly towards the games, there were two plays, and it's the reason I say it's because it happened twice, where Rodgers, he's thrown the ball into the turf. One he threw it into the turf, one he just chucked it out. I think he had a play. I genuinely think if Rodgers holds on to the ball, he takes the chance of being sacked to buy himself that of a second to get the ball out. And you know you're going to take the hit. You know you're risking the sack. But if you pull it off, you're going to get a first down. You're going to get a completion. I do think there was at least two plays where if Rodgers isn't sitting there, and I do think Rodgers is entirely vain enough to say, I'm not having my name attached to this is who Myles Garrett sacked to break the record. And I do think he's went, no, do you know what? He's one of the fastest quarterbacks getting the ball out in the league. Fourth, I believe. Going into last night, he was fourth fastest this year. So we know that he can get the ball out. The Steelers have got a good line. But I do think there was at least two downs where the Steelers could have actually got first downs if Rodgers takes that risk and goes, do you know what? I know I'm going to get hit, but I might connect and it might go through. And he's decided not to, because he doesn't want to be the QB that was there when Myles got the record. Right, okay.
Maybe to recap that, in short, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, we don't think that your team is that petty. We don't think Mike Tomlin is that petty. We absolutely think Aaron Rodgers is that petty.
Aaron Rodgers is that petty. That is where that's why you lost, Steelers Nation, because Aaron Rodgers fears Myles. Right, moving on. Oh yeah, and of course the actual news out of that game is not that Myles Garrett was chasing that record. The actual news is that it means that the Ravens and Steelers next week is one of, and we'll talk about games of the week at the end of the show, but it is going to be for the North. So it is going to huge, huge playoff implications. Right, okay. On the notion of games that hugely mattered, NFC South still massively up for grabs. You had Carolina and the Bucks. We mentioned earlier when we were talking about Green Bay going cold at the wrong time. Are we seeing the same in Carolina and Tampa? It's the NFC South. It's the division no one wants to win. Because, it's just an absolute tire fire. It's still alive. Both teams lost at the weekend. Is this one, Gav? You've been on Team Panthers all year, mate. And the Panthers had a much tougher matchup at the weekend. There is absolutely no denying that. But is it something that, I don't know, Panthers, are we just looking at two teams at the end of the day who are both just complete fodder for whoever they come up against in the wild card?
So I think I would probably say that with the Bucks, yes. I say that because unfortunately the form tells us exactly this. The Bucks are 1-7 since October. After a 5-1 start, it should be said. The Panthers, on the other hand, are perhaps a bit more interesting because they are wildly inconsistent. I think this is possibly my last pod of the regular season, so I will kick the Falcons one more time. Everyone says you don't know what Falcons team you're going to get. No, actually, you don't know what Panthers team you're going to get, because the Panthers have beaten some very good teams this year. They've beaten the Packers at Lambeau. They have beaten the Rams at home. And for 30 minutes of football, they look like they could potentially have taken the Seahawks as well. Now, to their credit, the Seahawks pulled away. No arguments that the final scores deserve. The Panthers have had it within them to take on big teams and win. If they make the playoffs, they will do it as a home team. That's the only way they can get in. So they are going to have home field advantage if they can win next weekend. Of course, this is also a team that has lost to the Saints. So they are a team that has, I think, a reasonable ceiling on any given Sunday. But the floor is pretty low too. So I do think that the Panthers will probably see it through and make the playoffs. What you get on wildcard weekend is very much up in the air. But I think that was very much my prediction all season, is for Panthers to take the division, and then who knows what can happen with that home field advantage. I think it's still playing out that way.
Yeah, I do love it. I love it more because you calling the Panthers pre-season as a team to watch will forever be one of my favourite, absolutely insane calls. And it looks like you're probably going to be right. So you got to love that. Right, okay, so yes, as we say, the NFC South is still well up in the air. Who knows how that one's going to shake out. The Jags, they killed off Phil Rivers. Oh my God, he's finally going to actually retire to his 55,000 children. So yeah, they keep the AFC South race in their hands. It's got to be one. To be fair, the AFC South has to be up there as one of the most interesting divisions this year. And it's good because it's a division that, well, I'm certainly used to slagging the South off. It's normally something that it's a bit silly. For years, it's not been a great division. But this year, we've talked lots about the Texans already. The Colts, we all know their story this year. It's been a hell of a year, Colts fans, and it's a shame that that's you kind of done. But the Jags, absolutely no idea what to make of Jacksonville. I have no idea what to make of them. They are a team that I have watched, and this is possibly slightly coloured by my fantasy acquisition of Brian Thomas Jr., and we know what happened to his year. The start of the season, they were winning unconvincingly, and we had some really bad results in there. And now they are starting to look a bit better. You know, they're sitting at 12-4, for goodness sake. I just don't know. I just don't know what to make of Jacksonville. I suppose it's a similar question to the one I just mentioned about Carolina and Tampa. They are a team that they are going to be in the postseason. Do you see the Jacksonville Jaguars being able to make a run in the postseason, Gav?
I mean, can they? Absolutely. We've seen that. They've gone to Denver, the place where we talked about as having that impenetrable fortress, maximum home field advantage you could possibly hope for. They went there and they got the win. So can they have an impact in the postseason? Yes, they can. Do I think they will? I'm really sorry, Sarah. I still don't think that they will. Now, I think a lot of it is potentially going to ride on, do they get that home field advantage? Because, of course, the Texans are kind of lurking there on 11-5. I think we don't have a head-to-head game between the two this week coming up. So Jaguars can win it on their own strength, or they can do it through a favour elsewhere. But they are potentially looking at a very tricky wildcard game if they play at home. Interestingly, if they were to drop down to the 5 seed and then they would have to visit the Ravens or Steelers, perhaps they would get the more favourable matchup. But yeah, they've beaten some good teams this year, but I don't know. There's not been many performances where I thought, wow. And maybe that's the issue, isn't it? That some of the other teams that we really like heading into the postseason at the moment, they have repeatedly impressed us. Is that because we're just not giving the Jags enough respect? I know what Sarah will say. But unlike other teams, I struggle to make the case for the Jags to make a deep run.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a shame because I do actually, I like the Jags. I like T-Law. I think he's a very, I'm not going to say an underrated quarterback. It's hard to be underrated when you came into the league with the fanfare that followed Trevor Lawrence. He was he who is chosen. But he's certainly not performed well. We know that historically the last number of seasons, well, Trevor Lawrence's professional career, organisationally, Jacksonville has been an absolute tyre fire. Things are looking a bit better now. The team has been pulling results together this year. I just don't know. I'm with you. I actually think what you're saying is quite an interesting one. If you are a Jags fan, do you want to lose? Do you want to finish as the 5 seed and go to Pittsburgh or to go to Baltimore? I would say that's probably an easier game than playing, who would they have? Oh, whoever they would have.
You've got three. I mean, run through. If the Jaguars win the division, there's three teams in the wild card spots who are all currently 11-5. So you've got Texans, divisional battle. That defense is ferocious. You've got
Wouldn't
the
want that.
Chargers. You've got the Chargers, who I mean, people will point to that game from almost 3 years ago where the Jags came back from 27 points down. But is that going to happen again? Is that going to play into the minds of the Chargers? It would. And then, of course, you've got the Bills, who have maybe not quite been the Bills of old, but how are you going to bet against Josh Allen?
Do you know what? I'll put it to you as a polar choice. Right? So I'm going to take the Texans out because divisional matchups are crazy, right? If you're a Jags fan and your option is playing either the Chargers or Bills, so one of them, or playing whoever out of the Steelers or Ravens, which of those teams would you rather face off? I know what I would say. I know exactly who I would rather face out of those sets. Who would you rather take on?
It's got to be your AFC North winner.
Yep, 100%. They are just so much weaker. Yes, we've just talked about how the Chargers came unstuck this weekend. We know that Herbert is great, but he is stoppable. Both of the Steelers and Ravens are much more stoppable than either the Chargers or the Bills. Yeah, I would try and do we talk about tanking when it's about postseason seeding? Is that still tanking? Yeah, no, for me, I would much rather that matchup. Right, we're going to do two really quickly, Gav, and then we're going to get on to our last two games of the show, which are actually interesting. The Pats whipped the Jets. Bad. Drake May looked fantastic. He had an incredible game. He broke a whole pile of records that I can't actually remember exactly what all of them were, but it's against the Jets. So yeah, most people break records against the Jets. They are structurally, this is from a Browns fan, they are the biggest joke of an organisation in this league, perhaps barring the Raiders. Who again, and I hate to gloss over your glorious victory, Gav, but it was a toilet bowl game. And it really was. And you talk about teams that know how to tank. That is the Las Vegas Raiders. They look awful. I don't know, really briefly in that one. Patriot fans out there, guys, all I'm going to say for all of you listening, well done. You really look like you've got, finally, your Tom Brady replacement in Mr. May. Vrabel's had an incredible year. He's up there for head coach of the year. Has to be. Enjoy the playoffs when they roll up. Gav, briefly, G-Men Raiders, you know, have your moment in the sun and relish beating the might that is the Las Vegas Raiders.
Do you know what I mean? A win is a win. I don't think there's much more that I can say to that. You know, if I'm always really mixed in the tanking thing, because of course, when you've got a bad team, you want to get a great player in the draft. I completely get that. Personally, I do think that Jackson Dart is our guy. I think most people would actually say that Jackson Dart is the guy for the foreseeable. I did see during the week that actually the Giants were putting out the messages that they will be evaluating all options, including quarterback. But of course, you're going to do that if you end up with the one seed. It's absolutely what you would do to try and maximize your trade value. I think Jackson Dart's a guy. Mendoza certainly at this stage is looking like the presumptive number one pick and be a good fit in Las Vegas. With the Giants, of course, he would be a talented player, but we have a quarterback and we do have other needs, particularly on our defense. So I think at the end of the day, you know, you play to win. You've got players out there who are not guaranteed roster spots next season by any stretch, so you can completely understand the mindset that they're playing to win. Obviously, the Raiders organisation were maybe thinking otherwise and standing down like some Max Crosby. Sure, absolutely wanted to go out and win for his team, but that is just the NFL for you. So yeah. It's victory Monday for me, but I think we do need to get on to some of Sunday night's main events.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, that's it. I couldn't not mention it because at the end of the day, you don't get many victories, Gav. Right, okay, so on to games that were actually... well, do you know what? So we had one game that was an absolute feast for the neutral. We'll talk about that last. That is, of course, the Bears-San Francisco game. You know, it was Sunday night primetime, and my God, primetime actually delivered. But before that, we had a game that, while not an incredible offensive showing by any stretch of the imagination, was an absolutely fascinating game. Philadelphia Eagles beating the Buffalo Bills 13-12. Now, the scoreline was very, very low. Both teams missed extra points. The conditions were awful. It was something that you don't hold the low scores against either team's offense. This isn't one where you're going to say that, Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen underperformed throughout the whole game. The conditions were just grim. It really was. What I will say, particularly for Philadelphia, that defensive unit played incredibly well. The entire game, they played fantastic football. You stopped the Bills scoring until the fourth quarter. Shut them out for 3 solid quarters. They could not get anything going in offense. Conditions is the same, blah, blah, blah. But a shutout for 3 quarters is a shutout for 3 quarters. You then have the Bills defense steps up in the second half. They keep the Eagles out of the end zone for the whole second half. An absolute defensive feast. Again, though, team's going cold at the wrong time. Bills fans, Bills Mafia, what is going on? And again, I suppose for me, before I come to you with this, Gav, I suppose, is this what sums it up? You've got your game in the line. You've not had any success so far all night. You've got your touchdown. You missed your extra point. Get the ball back. You take it all the way down the field. You get the touchdown. You now need to win it. And I backed them. I would have went for 2 as well. I would never be going for play for overtime. Not in those conditions, not the way the game was playing out. You put the ball in Josh Allen's hands. He is your superstar. I am full of apologies for Josh Allen most of the time. He has got absolute numpties at wide receiver. He missed that pass badly. This wasn't your wide receiver dropped it. This wasn't you got a sack. This wasn't you were under pressure. You had the time to throw it. You just missed the pass bad. Are we seeing, this is everybody's been saying, you're not going to have Joe Burrow in the playoffs. You're not going to have Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. This is it, Josh Allen. This is your year. Go on the big run. Finally, get Buffalo that Super Bowl. Are they choking already? And it's not even the playoffs yet? Are Buffalo not toast? Is that maybe a bit harsh? Are Buffalo toast already, Gav?
I would just really hope, I guess, as a Oxy Bills fan, and particularly one that actually did predict this game to be the Super Bowl this year, you've really got to hope that Josh Allen heals up, because the fact is that we are at the end of the season. That receiver room, or even the tight end situation, is not getting resolved in the next couple of weeks. You need Josh Allen to be at his best. And I think it's fair to say that, whether Josh Allen is, 80%, 70%, 60% healthy, whatever you want to talk about it, he is still pretty damn good. But there were just a collection of moments in this one where it wasn't quite there. And part of that, I think, does need to go down to the Philadelphia Eagles defense, because there was a lot of pressure in his face on that 2-point conversion. Admittedly, I will give it to you that his receiver was open on that play. But I think if we do look at other moments in the game, I am particularly thinking about his 4th down scramble, where he stopped half a yard shy of the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
Big part of that was Zach Bond making a big play, not getting faked out by the pump fake. So I think a lot of credit does need to go to that Eagles defense. The other name that I've not mentioned so far, Jalen Carter, who came back and had a monstrous game, had a fantastic sack. Also tipped or blocked the extra point attempt, which I guess would have allowed the Bills the option to go for 1 for the win if they wanted to do that. So I think, as much as people are saying that the Eagles are a first half team, unlike the Bills are a second half team, that Eagles defense did playing the whole way. I think they deserve a lot of credit. But Allen, as I say, there was just a few moments throughout this game where he was a little bit off. The other one that really caught my eye, and part of it you might say is just the circumstances. The Bills had a possession where I think they'd taken over in Eagles territory. It was 3rd down, and Josh Allen's scrambling to make a play, and he must have reversed field and gone back about 10, 15 yards. Huge sack, puts them out of field goal range. I know that there's extending the play, but that against the Eagles was just a bad decision. that again potentially cost points, cost field position. We know that that's not typical of Josh Allen, but I think this is one of these situations where physically he definitely needs to heal up because there were little differences in his game this week, and mentally just needs to goldfish really need to write this one off, because at the end of the day, the Eagles are still a good team, division winners, defending Super Bowl champions. You lost by one, you had it in your power to go and win that game, and you'd rather lose a game like that in December than in January.
Yeah, it is true. And for what it's worth, Josh Allen insists that his foot injury had no impact on his play in the second half. I think he's a liar, but that's what he's saying. So yeah, it is one that's interesting stat that came out of that game. So that is the second time that Jalen Hurts has managed to win a game without completing a pass in the second half. No other starting quarterback has attempted a pass without a completion in the second half of a win in the last 2 seasons. So there you go. A nice wee one for the NFL's research team. Right, okay, so from defensive game, finally, a game that had some offense. And it was prime time. It was Sunday Night Football. It was the Bears facing off against the San Francisco 49ers. Niners winning this one 42-38. An absolutely incredible game. Do you know what? I've done this 2 shows in a row now. Bears fans, buckle up. Caleb might actually be him. He's not going to make 4,000 yards. But what a performance for Caleb. Couple of passes, couple of touchdown passes in the first half were absolutely wild. Fantastic throws. Caleb, 100%. One of the things for me that you need, if you want to say that this is our guy, this is our quarterback, you need to be able to say, do you know what? Put the team on your back. Put the team on your back. You be the person that makes the difference for us. And at the end of the day, Caleb, he came out, he slung it for 330 yards, didn't take any, no picks, didn't take any sacks, couple of touchdowns, looked fantastic. Didn't really have huge amount on the ground from Chicago at all. They put it on his shoulders, and he looked great. It was unfortunate to walk away with a loss, but that then comes down to the 49ers and a man you may have heard of, Gav, called Christian McCaffrey. 140 yards in the ground. Not 85 yards in there, 41 yards through there. What a day for him. Good day for Brock Purdy as well. 303 yards through the air. Fantastic game. What did you make? Is this showing us, Gavis, was my big question for this one. Is this showing us that the Niners are actually, despite all of the problems they've had all year, all of the injury worries, all of the woes, are the 49ers actually here to play in the postseason?
I genuinely think the answer to that is yes. That's a strong yes for me. And the reason for that is because actually, we've talked about some teams that we've maybe not respected. I don't think we've ever disrespected the Niners. We've simply just not talked about them for much of this year. And a big part of the reason for that is because it's a stacked division. I mean, I think it's arguable to say NFC best. You've got the Rams, you've got the Seahawks, who have been leading the way all year long. And the Niners have had some terrible injuries, really, to the team. Brock Purdy's not going right for the year, but he was out for several weeks. Fred Warner looked to have been out for the season, although there is rumblings that he could play a role late in the postseason if the Niners could get that far. So, I mean, these are not just injuries. These are key players. But unlike some of the other teams that we've talked about who have struggled to overcome an injury, the Niners have been nothing if not resilient. Mac Jones has helped them to some big wins along the way. Historically, I'm minded of the fact that the Niners have always managed to deal with injuries pretty well. I mean, if you look at their receiver room, everyone is talking about Brock Purdy, but Ricky Pearsall is essentially really played his rookie year this year. Tongs is the number 2 receiver with 7-yard catches for 60. And then it's Joanne Jennings, Robinson, Kendrick Bourne. These are not big names that are highlighting the Niners receiver room, but unlike perhaps in Buffalo, they're getting the job done. And this is a team that's always seemed to manage injuries. I think in previous Super Bowl runs, San Francisco's been doing it with their RB5s, getting the work done. So this is a team that just seems to be able to overcome adversity. But there is a nucleus there. There's a familiarity with what it takes to win in the postseason. They've gone to the Super Bowl twice in the last 5-6 years. So there is something that we've not really given them perhaps the credit that they're due. But now they are in a situation where they can go and take the 1 seed off of Seattle, most likely, and force teams to come visit them. Obviously, you've got the West Coast travel, potentially becomes a factor for some of those playoff matchups. Also, there's a lot to like about San Francisco, and they have done it on the down low for most of the year.
Yeah, it's funny because you don't really get teams pulling the kind of, sitting at 12-4. That aren't getting talked about a huge amount, but it does kind of feel like that has been San Francisco this year. And then I've been chucking a couple of wee stats in today. Another nice one that I've actually just spotted. That's Christian McCaffrey joined Hall of Famer LaDainian Tomlinson as the only players in NFL history with 3 seasons of 2,000 plus scrimmage yards and 15 touchdowns. So go CMC. What a guy. Right, okay. We're going to wrap this one up, Gav. We're going to look ahead to next week. And, normally in the show, we'll pick a game each to say what our game of the week's going to be next week. I'm going to be a bit of a harsher man this week. There are really only 3 games to choose from next week, as they are winner takes it all. We have got Panthers Bucks, we have got, as you just mentioned, Seahawks Niners, and we have got Ravens Steelers. Each of those games has got either a division title on the line or 1 seed implications on the line as well. Which of those is going to be your game of the week next week, Gav?
For me, it does need to be Seahawks 49ers. Like I say, 49ers has been quiet all season. But the one thing I noticed when I was looking back at the form this year is way back at the start, they beat the Seahawks week 1. Now, a lot has changed since then, but the 49ers already have the upper hand. So if they win this game, they will own the head-to-head with a season sweep of the Seahawks. They've got the better divisional record. They've got the better conference record. They will have home field advantage and that inside track to get into the Super Bowl. And yes, they will, of course, have that bye and try to nurse up some of the more minor injuries in the squad. So, yeah, I think perhaps there is higher stakes in terms of being in or out of the postseason, the other games, but looking ahead to who could be playing for Lombardi, I'm very much got my eye on Seahawks.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to be really bold. We're going to have consensus. I prefer it when we disagree. But at the end of the day, I think the Panthers-Bucks games are trying to figure out, and I hate to say it to you, Gav, I'm trying to figure out who's going out of the playoffs first rather than anything else in that game. And I'm going to be honest, it's exactly the same with the Ravens Steelers. You can have the North Bunnies who's going to win it, and then you're going to get punted straight out of the playoffs. So, yeah, the game that actually has real postseason implications is Niners-Seahawks, and it's potentially going to be an absolute cracker to see who's possibly going to go all the way in the NFC. This could easily be us looking at who are our NFC champions elect, which, when you think about the year the Niners have had in terms of injuries and all the rest of it, it's not something I thought I'd be saying. Right, with that brings us to a close. It brings week 17 to a close. Obviously, we have still got Monday Night Football to look forward to. But that aside, we are heading to the end of the regular season and to the end of 2025. Now, remember, episodes is going to be here every single week. We are here in 2026 as well as 2025. Every Tuesday, we will be dropping to give you your look back at the week that's gone in the NFL and a look ahead to the week that is coming. So make sure, as I say, that you like, you subscribe, get your notifications turned on so that you get us straight into your inbox every single week. Gav, it has been another fantastic show, mate. Thank you for joining me, and have a very happy new year when it comes, Gav.
Thank you very much, but I am going to throw a little surprise into your scene as very, very end of the podcast, and it is the end of 2025. So you've done the trail, so this is almost like a Marvel movie with the post-credits scene. New Year's resolutions, Brian. We'll maybe leave it to the team to put it to put it out for the rest of the league, but what have you got in the football world? What's your New Year?
As a Browns fan, right, so I'll give you my Browns New Year resolution. Stick with Shador for a year. Give him a year. Draft O-line, draft wide receivers, give him the year and let's see what we actually have. There's enough there that we might have somebody who can be functional. Do not panic and draft 16 quarterbacks across 3 rounds. Try and give the guy a crack at it for a year, and then if he sucks, then it's a better draft class in the year following anyway.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. And to be honest, I think from the Giants is probably a similar situation. However, I am going to go outside the NFL for a second because I am going to make it my mission in 2026 to get you into flag because I think that's doable. We've had Sarah watching live streams on transatlantic flights. I think we can do the same for you. So I am going to have to try and give you, Mr. Donlan, some Christmas holiday homework. I'll need to find the top 5 games list to show you and see if we can sell you on the sport that is flag football and keep you busy during the NFL off season. So that's on my to-do list.
Well, there you go, folks. So Gav's got a job set for himself for the year to get me into a game that doesn't involve tackling. It's not going to be an easy mission. So, right, with that is going to wrap the show up, folks. Thank you so much for listening. Join us next week when we will wrap up all things this season, because it will be over. And as I say, remember, make sure that you've your notifications turned on. Make sure you like, you subscribe, you follow us wherever you get your podcasts. I have been Brian Donlan. He has been Gav. Thank you very much, folks, and we will catch you in the next one.